Broodweaver is currently one of the least used subclasses in the game, boasting an embarrassing 1.5% usage rate, and among winning teams in trials, only about 0.25% of the players are Broodweavers. In other words, there are less than 2 Broodweavers for every 100 Guardians in PvP, and among players with winning records in trials, there are only 2 for every 1,000 players roughly. So what gives? Is this subclass absolute trash? So many players dropped the Broodweaver subclass like a bad habit just weeks after its release in Lightfall. So does the subclass deserve to go the way of the dinosaur, or 3 seasons later is it about to pull a messiah on us and make a comeback? I think the answer to that question is really dependent on the players, not so much Bungie, because I think Broodweaver has all the tools it needs to be an exceptional subclass, but the problem is people seem to be unsure how to use those tools. In this video, I'll unpack everything I think players need to rethink and strategies they need to employ if they want the Broodweaver to reach its full potential. First, let me give you a quick summary of what I've learned about the role that the Broodweaver kit serves in PvP. I think one of the biggest problems is people are trying to force the Broodweaver kit to wear shoes that don't fit it. They want it to be a ramrod or a spear. Some try to play it like a defender, but the Broodweaver is a utility class. It's about controlling the field of play. That doesn't mean it can't be offensive or it can't be defensive. It's adaptable. Here's one of my favorite clips that displays all the strengths of the Broodweaver working in unison. It starts off with a threadling grenade, and now the opponent needs to make a choice. Is he going to shoot me or the wall of death babies coming at him? He gets hit by one of them, and a burst from my pulse decides to dip for cover, but the babies chase him down. They kill him. Now I have a tangle. I added a variable into that fight that slowed him down, controlled the fight, ended in my victory. Now I take the tangle and I throw it down the hall to suspend 2 guys. I again introduce a variable into the fight that offsets the 1v2, helps me control the pace. I take them out, grab their heavy, dump it, wrap around and drop the Needle Storm Super exactly in its ideal range where the Gossamer Cannon has time to arm, find targets, and delete them. I now have lots of perched threadlings and more going out the door, and I'm able to piggyback off of those threadlings for a few more kills. It's all about control, introducing new variables to change the field of play. It can buy you time if you need to go on the defensive and break for cover. You release some threadlings with your rift or a grenade and keep people from pushing you while you're weak by making them deal with your death babies. Or it can be offensive. Follow your babies into a fight and use them as a distraction. I've actually had a threadling jump up in an enemy's face before and take their whole fusion rifle shot live on stream and save my life, allowing me to kill the guy before he could fire off another charged shot. I couldn't believe it. It's all about introducing new variables and gaining control. That is the Broodweaver. Now, let me give you some practical tips, and then we'll highlight the best aspects and fragments after that. Let's start with one of the most underutilized abilities in the game, the Arcane Needle. The Arcane Needle is a unicorn in PvP. I literally never see it used, and it's a shame, because it has a lot of practical applications, as well as having 3 charges. One of the best ways to use it is as a prediction melee ability. Like, you can wait until you think an enemy is about to come around a corner, about to challenge a lane, and toss it down the lane at the door or the choke point, and oftentimes I'll tag someone right as they come out, since the needle does have some tracking on it. They take 60-ish damage, and now I know that if I kill them, I'll have a tangle to play with. Another great way to use it is as a peek shot melee, sort of like a hand cannon. A lot of times I'll just sidestep out of cover, toss it down the lane, sidestep back in, wait and see if I get any hit markers. And lastly, it's really good for when you need to backpedal someone who is aping you. Just jump back and start tossing, since you don't have to worry about in-air accuracy penalties with the needle. It's often more useful than your firearm in those situations. Now let's chat about the super. The Needle Storm Super, it can be great, and it can be absolute dog water too. It depends on how you use it, or more accurately, at what range you use it. It needs space. It needs space to arm, find targets, and delete them. You can't just dunk people like you would with a Nova Bomb. You have to give it, 20 meters or so of distance. You also don't have to focus too hard on, I see people do this all the time. You don't have to focus on turning your camera right at an enemy and putting the crosshairs right on a target. Just put your sights in the open space covering as much ground as possible in front of you, and they'll find the targets. Your super will find the targets. I see a lot of people just try to toss it like a Nova Bomb. It's not like that. It also works well if you give yourself some elevation. Then you can try to collect the threadlings that are left wandering around. That way they stick to you and go with you into your next fight. Now let's talk about the Rift. I have one helpful tip about the Rift. When you cast your Rift, make sure you turn your camera to the sides so that the threadlings go away from the cover that you're behind. If you cast the Rift while facing the wall, they'll just run into the wall and come back to you. If you turn your camera, they will shoot out to the side and around the wall or piece of cover and go looking for an enemy. I often use this as a way of setting up an engagement and letting my threadlings go take some aggro for me. And regarding your threadlings, you gotta give them some room to breathe. A lot of people make the mistake of throwing the threadling grenade and then immediately running out. They take a couple seconds to deploy and start moving in the right direction. So I toss the grenade and count to 2 after they hatch. Give them some room to breathe, and once they get started in the right direction, that's when you follow them in. Now let's talk about tangles. Tangles are a great utility in PvP. Again, this is what Broodweaver is good at, introducing new variables. The tangle is one of them. Basically, you can assume that anytime you tag someone with a threadling or an arcane needle, then they're going to leave behind a tangle when they die. You then have 2 choices. You detonate the tangle or you pick it up. And this is where my build starts to come into play. I like to run the Swarmers. They're niche, but no one uses them, but I like them. I want more threadlings, so these exotic boots make it so that when I throw or detonate a tangle, it's going to create an extra threadling for even more damage. So I have to make the choice depending on where the tangle is made. If the tangle is next to another enemy, I'll detonate it. If the tangle is in a choke point, I'll often wait and treat it like a trap that I can spring on command. I'll wait for an enemy to come into the doorway or the lane, and then I'll pop it for big damage. If a teammate is running towards my tangle, I'll always try to detonate it before they can pick that up. And I know that sounds mean, but it's because people can't help themselves. They see a glowy thing and they get a prompt on their screen, they're gonna pick it up. It could be a glob of molten lava in real life, and I swear a Destiny Blueberry will unquestioningly scoop the whole mess into their hands if you put a prompt in their vision. The truth is that almost no one is actually built for tangles. They don't have the necessary fragments equipped to leverage them, but I do. So if someone starts moving towards my tangle, I'm going to go ahead and detonate it, and that's going to create threadlings, extra threadlings, that can go support them or come back to me. It's just the smart thing to do. But if I have a clear path to that tangle, I also run the Wanderer aspect, which makes it so that when I throw the tangle, it will suspend targets that get hit by it. You saw it in that burnout clip. It takes a second to stick to them, detonate, and send them up like puppets. So you'll want to toss it and move back into cover for a second while it does its thing, then push after you hear the detonation. Just know that with the Wanderer, these tangles basically have no drop to them. So don't throw it high expecting it to arc back down, because it won't. Just throw it straight at the enemy that you see, and it will fly like a drone in a straight line. I've tried throwing some straight up into the sky for trick shot throws, expecting them to come back down, but I just ended up putting a few tangles in orbit. Now let's move on to strand weapons. A big part of using Broodweaver to its fullest potential is leaning into the fragment thread of rebirth. Strand weapon final blows have a chance to create a threadling. This happens frequently, and a lot of times it's a game changer. And yes, it can stack with hatchling to create 2 threadlings on a kill. I run hatchling on my round robin, and I just end up creating threadlings for almost every fight between the hatchling perk, the rebirth fragment, the threadling grenade, the rift, the tangles, just creating more variables. So you definitely want to run a strand weapon with Broodweaver, otherwise you're missing out on free threadlings and free tangles. And the good news is that there are a lot of good ones to choose from. The most obvious one is the Immortal SMG. Otherwise, you've got Rufus's Fury, which is exceptional, the round robin hand cannon, the different times pulse, which has become a personal favorite of mine, the old Sterling auto rifle, the Michael's Reverence sidearm, and even some special weapons to choose from, like the new Navigator trace rifle. You've got a lot of options. And finally, let me hit my aspects and fragments. Obviously, I'm using the Threadling Grenade. I've got Weaver's Call to create threadlings on Riftcast, and the Wanderer for suspending tangles. For fragments, I have Thread of Continuity for extra strength, and added duration to suspend, unravel, and sever. Thread of Finality for free plus 10 recovery, but you could swap it out for something else if your recovery stat is high. There's Thread of Rebirth to create threadlings on Strand Weapon Final Blows, and Thread of Evolution, which is crucial because it makes threadlings travel farther and do more damage. This is my basic setup in conjunction with the Swarmers, and I absolutely love playing it. And it also works quite well in PvE content too. So there it is. I hope you found this video educational and helpful for understanding how to play Broodweaver at a high level. I do truly believe that the Broodweaver is a strong subclass in PvP when you know how to play it properly. I hope people can catch on to it soon, because it's also insanely fun in a Crucible that's pretty bland and dry these days. It's a great way to keep the spark alive. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for additional Destiny 2 content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.
Double down. What can stop you if you fight together? Nothing. You're in the lead. 2 for 1.